Welcome, everyone, to the Fanitarium, the place where the fans run the madhouse. This is your host, Jeremiah, and with me is my co-host, Kayla.
Hello.
So a little introduction for those who are brand new to us. This, as I said, is the Fanitarium, a place where fans can be fans. Our goal is to create as positive atmosphere as possible. For those who have known us from our other shows, like Bombad Radio and so on, this show will be run a little bit differently, but I hope that you are here for the ride and you enjoy what we have planned today. Today's topic is, well, what better way to start than talking about fandom? It's a pretty awesome time to be a fan of, well, almost anything. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. I mean, we're getting new content every day, and con season's really starting to pick up, so we're going to get even more things. And gosh, what an exciting next couple of months that are going to be in the cinemas with Ready Player One at the end of this month.
Tomb Raider this week.
Infinity War next month.
Yeah, Pacific
April.
Rim next week.
Yeah, next week. Yeah, Pac Rim 2.
Deadpool's coming up. We got a Star Wars movie coming up in 2 months. You know, and then throughout this summer, there is so much to talk about that is coming out, and you know, and added Netflix. We just had Jessica Jones. We have Daredevil. We have Luke Cage. We have Agents of Shield. You know, perhaps on its last season. Who knows? We have a DC streaming service coming up. We have a Disney streaming service coming up. There is a lot for fans to love that's happening right now, even in theme parks, Star Wars Land, Nintendo Land, Pandora Open. There is a lot happening for fans, and we are here to bask in that and to love it, because I'm a fan, Kayla's a fan, and I hope all of you are fans of at least something. Maybe even shoes. You can be fans of shoes.
There's a shoe fandom, I'm certain.
I'm quite sure there's podcasts about shoes. I saw a book the other day in, what was I in? Tuesday morning, maybe? Or Marshall's? But there's a book which was like 1,000 pages long called The History of Shoes, and all it was like a photo history of high heels. I did not know they'd made these, but they do. So
who knew?
It's for fans. There's fans of everything, but we aren't going to be talking about shoes for the most part, I think. We're going to be talking about the state of fandom. So, coming up this year in 2018, we're just going to be focusing on 2018. There is a lot. I think we should probably start on Star Wars fandom. I think it's a pretty good place to go. We just had The Last Jedi just came out digitally and coming out on Blu-ray any day now, and I think that's a pretty good place to start. We have just Star Wars Rebels just ended, which I have to say was fantastic. Star Wars Rebels gave me Star Wars stories the way the best of the Clone Wars did, and it was a beautiful way to wrap it up and a great way to set us up for potential of the future. You know, there were tears, there was some great imagery, and they didn't, how should I put it? They didn't just end it outright. Like, it is done. It is done. They wrapped it up really well, but they didn't like, let's have a bloodbath, kill everyone so these characters will never be used again. No, they bid farewell to a show, and they're still able to be used in the future, and I loved it. Star Wars Rebels, if you've not seen it, go watch it. I don't think it's available for streaming anywhere unless you want to pay for it, but I'm quite sure once we get the Disney streaming service next year, it will be on there. And you should definitely watch it. I didn't like it at first, but I like the way it continued.
It grew on you, and now it's your friend.
Yeah, because it's kind of whiplashy from Clone Wars, because Clone Wars was epic in scale. You know, it bounced around from character to character. There were different arcs, and they weren't necessarily all connected. You know, there was it was kind of like a show covering everything happening in Clone Wars at the same time. It's huge scale. And it kind of just got cut off. But, you know, there was campaigns, there was, you know, big things. But this one's a small group of rebels on a planet that occasionally goes to other planets, but it's a very small cell. So this one, nothing really had the scale of Clone Wars. But since you got to really zoom in on some characters that you didn't really know the fates of, it made it more intimate. It made it so you cared about them more. And so even though the struggle was smaller because it was focusing on their particular issues, it really lent itself to, you know, becoming a fan of them, liking them, and these characters you really became near and dear to you. Kind of like, you know, Ahsoka became really dear to people in Clone Wars because she was new and she was a focus of a lot of the series. these people were a lot like that, and now they're definitely fan favorites, and I look forward to seeing what they do with them. Hopefully in the near future, but I'm assuming we'll probably have to wait till the Disney streaming service starts.
Yeah, something tells me we'll be waiting a while. It'll probably be worth it, but I think we're gonna have to wait.
But we do have a Star Wars movie coming out in May 25th.
Yes, we do. Solo, a Star Wars story.
So a lot of people have been iffy on this film. Mostly, not necessarily that they think the film would be bad. They just think the film didn't need to be made. I think it's most people's consensus. It just seemed to be something that just no one saw the point of it being made, or
right.
Not as many. But I think the closer we're getting to it, the more excited I am to see it. Like, I don't think it's gonna be the deepest film. I don't think it's gonna be like The Last Jedi, where it really pushes your fandom and really pushes you in Star Wars in a new direction. I don't think it's gonna even try. I don't think it wants to.
I don't think that it can.
But
I mean, it can bring some new things to light and tell a new story that we haven't heard. But I don't think it can change a whole lot, being more or less a prequel.
But I do think it can be a whole lot of fun. And I do know cosplayers are salivating over the Lando outfit, the yellow one with like the very loose neck scarf tie thing.
Who wouldn't?
And then Emilia Clarke's outfit, the white leather jacket one.
On
the
space ponytails, finally.
Like, fandom is looking forward to a lot of the stuff, and really, I just want it to be fun. Doesn't have to be deep. Just make it fun.
There's a great Facebook cosplay group that's Ladies of the Legions. It's all ladies who are either in or trying to get into 501st Rebel Legion, the Mandalorian Mercs, da-da-da. And when that trailer came out, we were all like, okay, where do we get this stuff? Let's get cracking on it. And it's amazing how quickly and how passionate these cosplayers and costumers and just artists are about getting this stuff and doing it right and quickly. I mean, I don't have the time or the energy, but these people they make these incredible things and so fast.
Is that Emilia Clarke also in one of the shots has like a female in an Imperial uniform with a giant space cape, black space cape? Is that Emilia Clarke as well?
I thought so.
That's what I thought.
But maybe not.
I don't understand how that would work, but I guess we'll find out.
We will find out.
It seems like a heist movie, so
I don't know. That's me with Star Wars. That's part of the fun. Is like, I guess we'll find out. I mean, I can speculate 24/7, but also if I just go in with no expectations other than I'm here to see Star Wars, I'm gonna have a good time and I'm gonna enjoy the movie. I'm not big into, oh, I need this specific thing and I want this to happen and I need this character to do this. I'm more of a I'm just gonna enjoy Star Wars. It's gonna be great, and it usually is.
I do like the posters. I think the posters stand out as very different Star Wars posters. I like seeing them on the cinema here. It's the Solo poster is the big one showing right now on the front of my theater here, and it's that poster really stands out. It doesn't look like a standard Star Wars poster, and I think that makes it better. It makes it look like something new. And I haven't seen as many people complain about the poster art this time around as they have done with some of the other recent movies where it looks like Photoshop.
Yeah, I'm going to send you this real quick. There is a French artist who claims that they actually plagiarized his art style for the Solo posters, and the proof is pretty damning. They are amazing. You're absolutely correct, but this is pretty damning.
This is an article that's on slashfilm.com. Came out on the 4th of March. It's just called Solo: A Star Wars Story. Poster designs may have been smuggled from a French artist. They do definitely look very similar, but
they do. They really, really do. You're not wrong. They're amazing, and they're a huge departure from what we expect to see from Star Wars promo posters.
Now, here there's something at the very bottom of this article that I think is very important for people to know. Yes, these look very similar. Yes, they could have been lifted, but here's something that Slash Film writes out that people should know. What we don't know if the designer of these posters, apparently BLT Communications LLC, made them, lifted the artwork style and submitted it as an original design unbeknownst to Disney, or if the rights to design were purchased from Sony by Disney and the artist simply wasn't notified. After all, his artwork would likely be owned by Sony now, and they may not have to notify him if such designs were sold to be repurposed elsewhere. Disney has that yet addressed the claim, but that's it. As far as we know, Disney could have purchased the rights from Sony, or an artist could have ripped them. We don't know, but
We don't know.
Disney tends to cover their butt from lawsuits, so I'm going to
Either
lean
way,
towards they probably paid someone.
Either way, these posters are super cool.
And
I hope they weren't lifted, but either way, super cool.
And we also get music by John Powell, who I love his music. How to Train Your Dragon, Kung Fu Panda, the Bourne movies. He does great music for this type of movie. And unlike Michael Giacchino, he has time to do his score the way he wants to. He has planned plenty of time to get it done. And I'm looking forward to what he does. And of course, the main theme for Solo gets to be done by John Williams, who has never done an actual theme for Han Solo before. So he wanted to do it, and so he gets to do a theme, and John Powell gets to do the score, and I think that's a match made in heaven.
And I think we all win.
Yep.
There are no losers in that scenario.
Except for those who refuse to see the movie because whatever reason. But I think Star Wars is in a pretty good place right now. Sadly, this year we don't have a celebration or a D23, I believe. I think that was last year as well. D23, of course, is the Disney Expo. The next one is in 2019. So no D23 or celebration this year, which does feel kind of odd, doesn't it? Doesn't it feel odd not to have like a Star Wars celebration to get all these trailers and really excited with?
It feels weird that they haven't announced it yet. Like where the next one's gonna be. Like there's still nothing. And like I was in the room when they said that they hadn't figured out where the next one was, and you could just feel everyone go, whew, like this whole like energy just drained from the room.
I'm guessing they're probably going to go to Anaheim again. But my prediction, and I think this is most people's prediction, they're going to coincide it with the launch of Star Wars Land. So they can't really set it until they have a pretty firm date when Star Wars Land is going to start. That's my guess.
My guess is they're gonna announce it on May 4th.
Yeah, I can go with that one.
Maybe. I don't know. Whatever.
But Star Wars Land is opening next year, supposedly at both parks, right? So I can see them doing, heck, they might even do East Coast, West Coast, and have it as a massive celebration across the nation for Star Wars Land.
Ooh, yeah. I have a hard time believing they're going to do it at a place that doesn't have the new Star Wars theme park that's name has just fallen out of my head.
Galaxy's Edge.
Galaxy's Edge, thank you. They got if it's gonna be the same year as those parks open, there's no way they wouldn't correlate the two. They don't need to. That place is gonna sell out for years. There's gonna be no issues with them filling the place up, but it just makes a lot of sense.
And they're gonna make bank because they just raise the prices for the park like they do. They also start charging for parking at the Disney hotels.
I already thought they had, so when I read that, I was like, oh, were they not?
But that's beyond the point. Star Wars seems to be in a pretty good place right now. We get Episode 9 the end of next year. That, of course, is being directed by J.J. Abrams. We don't really have any details on that right now, but I don't know if Disney fully has all the details anyway. So we'll see what happens with Episode 9. But right now, Solo: A Star Wars Story is coming fast and furious, and The Last Jedi is out, so you can watch it. And there's a lot of great deleted scenes. If you haven't seen them yet, look for the one with the alternate death of Captain Phasma. It's pretty great. I actually think it's a much more powerful scene than we got in the movie. Okay. Are you still there?
Yes.
Okay, you got really quiet for a second.
It's because I went to sleep. I've actually been asleep this whole time.
Star Trek. Star Trek is a kind of confusing fandom for me. Bear with me to see tell me if you think this is correct. From what I've seen, we're still getting a movie. It might be done by Quentin Tarantino. It might be done by someone else. Who knows? But we're probably going to get a Star Trek 4, maybe with Chris Hemsworth, maybe with not. Paramount, who has the movie rights, doesn't seem to really know what they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
But they're doing something, and they probably will make at least one more, even though Star Trek Beyond underperformed a lot, sadly.
Yes.
On the other side, Star Trek Discovery was a pretty big success for CBS All Access, which means you had to pay to get on it unless you were overseas or to get it on Netflix.
Yo.
Pretty good success. It seems like after it seemed like the early part of the season people were waffling a little bit, and then by the end, most of the people who were watching the show were pretty sold the way it ended, and they're doing another season of it. Um, Not exactly sure when that one's coming out, but they're doing another season of it for them, and it seems like that has been a pretty big success for them, moving Star Trek in a new direction, which works for some, doesn't work for others, but I think that's the way all fandoms work.
So I haven't seen the second half of this season, so I don't know what's going on.
But for the most part, it looks like people really enjoyed it. And ironically, the people who did not really enjoy it or didn't want to watch, didn't want to have to pay for it, the Orville, the Seth MacFarlane spoof of Star Trek, which is pretty much Star Trek, actually got a lot of success as well. People wanted Star Trek, and they got it either from Fox with the Orville, or they got it from CBS on CBS All Access to Star Trek Discovery, and it seems like a lot of people are happy.
The Orville was absolutely delightful
I
as
loved
far
it.
as far as like the Star Trek I saw as a kid growing up, sneaking and watching it behind my parents in the living room, and it not only was it like silly Star Trekky fun, but it also got real serious often,
And
and made you feel things that you didn't expect from Seth MacFarlane.
and it's not as off the wall as like he did with Ted or A Million Ways to Die in the West. No, they tried touching on political issues like Star Trek does. Some of them more successful than others, but they also had characters that you actually liked. He was quite like I love the dynamic between him and um, what's her name, Adrian Palicki.
hmm
I thought they were great. I actually love both of them as actors, so I think they worked really well together. And the way the crew worked and the guest stars and so on, I think it worked really well and it looks good. And I'm glad Fox likes it because Fox tends to get on the panic button really soon. And if you're worried about Disney buying Fox, don't worry. That's at least a year to 18 months away before it's finalized. And so these shows, Fox is continuing on with all these shows. And I don't think Disney's just going to be like, flush everything down the toilet. Why would they do that? If it's working, Disney's not going to flush it. But you have at least another season or two before Disney even owns the company, so relax.
I wasn't worried about the Orville not getting another season because Seth MacFarlane is the savior of Fox. Family Guy
He's made them
rescued
so
that
much
network.
money.
Yeah, exactly.
Even
So
when they try
whenever
canceling his shows all the time, he's still DVDs rise up from the ashes.
Yes, exactly. So I wasn't worried about it getting a second season. I'm really glad it is because I love it.
Well, just remember his sitcom he did last year didn't work out very well though.
What was that?
Didn't he do Dads?
I have no
With
idea.
Giovanni Ribisi and Seth Green. I watched all of it.
Oh, maybe.
And I thought it was silly fun, but I like watching sitcoms where I can just don't have to pay attention. I just like, oh look, that's hilarious. Oh look, they're vomiting. Ew.
Yeah, brainless TV where you're like, I don't have to think about this. I'm just going to enjoy.
But that one didn't really work. But the Orville, he was on Star Trek. He's been an actor in Star Trek, and he loves Star
Yes.
Trek and Star
Yes.
Wars. So it seems like something very near and dear to his heart,
hmm
which helps because he's getting kind of bored with Family Guy. As much money as it makes him, how many years can you actually do something like that and still, have a lot in it?
Right. Right.
But Star Trek seems to be in a good place for right now. Hopefully the movie's gonna pick up soon because I am more of a Star Trek movie guy than a show guy. But that's me. That's the way Star Trek works. Next. Marvel. When we're recording this is the day that in the Infinity War final trailer came out, tickets went on sale, and Marvel is in a very good place to dominate the summer. They've already dominated quarter 1, and Black Panther, which is set to be, I think it's the 5th movie to ever cross $600 million domestically. It's crossed $1 billion. It's at least going to tie with Civil War, if not pass it, worldwide.
God, it's got to pass it. I'm dollars to donuts now. It's got to pass it.
It'll pass it from the domestic one, not necessarily the worldwide.
Yeah.
But my goodness, Black Panther. I was. Marvel's weird. Okay, the movies that I should be the most excited for, like Spider-Man, who's one of my favorite Marvel character, and Captain America and so on, I'm not getting excited for. But then the movies like Ant-Man and Black Panther, I'm like, I don't like these characters. They're stupid. I watched the movies and I love them.
Was it Paul Rudd's own kid, Ant-Man? That sounds stupid. Can't wait to see how terrible that's gonna be.
But like, I saw Black Panther. I loved it. It was fantastic. And I have to say, You haven't seen Black Panther yet, right?
I haven't. I haven't had
Okay.
an evening off, but this once the show I'm in gets started, that's the first thing I'm doing is going straight to the cinema and seeing it because I have heard so many amazing things, and I'm just so disappointed I haven't gotten to see it yet.
Look, Killmonger is a great villain, but I have to say Andy Serkis as Claw, actually being able to be Claw, is one of the most perfect villains I've seen put on screen from a comic book movie. He is awesome.
Perfect.
And he has a, it's kind of awesome. Everyone in this movie, for the most part, except Martin Freeman, has African accents. Okay, including Andy Serkis, who puts on a South African accent, and it's awesome. And he's like, we saw the day before we saw 13 going on 30 because my wife wanted to see a chick flick, and seeing Andy Serkis in that, and then seeing him in Black Panther is like, whoa, he got huge. He is a big man now. And it's great. Black Panther is really great. I'm looking forward to Ant-Man and the Wasp, perhaps more than Infinity War. But the reason being, I like going to the cinemas to divert me from very serious things because I get to deal with them all the time in schools where I work. And so Ant-Man and the Wasp looks like to be a fun diversion. Infinity War looks to be like the epic superhero movie most people have dreamed of their entire life, and I hope they can pull it off.
Everybody's gonna die.
I actually had a kid in school today who ran out of his class. Okay, ran out of his science class because his classmates were telling him they saw Infinity War today and everyone died, and he was freaking out about it. That they spoiled the movie and that they just can't kill everyone. He loves these characters so much and all that, and he was like freaking out about Infinity War. And I'm in middle school. This kid is in 8th grade, and that's how much this film means to people.
Same kid. Same. I feel him.
But the last Infinity War trailer, I have to say, is the trailer I've been waiting for this movie. It looks like the epic experience that we've wanted. I am still very confused on the story, just because there was a story released a couple months ago that the Russos said that this and Avengers 4, which is not named yet because they said it would spoil 3, are two different stories. They're not made as part 1, part 2. And then there's another story that said they're basically part 1, part 2 split in half. And then there was one a couple months ago that said Captain Marvel's in it. And then there's one that came out today that says she's not. I'm not. I'm assuming a lot changed in editing, but like, is it 2 parts? Is it like Winter Soldier to Civil War type 2 parts, or is it like Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows part 1, part 2? What are we expecting?
Right, exactly. Is it that last book into 2 movies, or is it 2 separate thought processes that are somewhat connected, like a series?
And how the heck does Ant-Man and the Wasp fit in following up to it, and then Captain Marvel in the 90s fit in following up to it? How does that fit? I need to know. I need to make it April 27th.
We all need to know.
I need to know.
I know. There's just so much. There's just so much.
And also with Marvel, they seem to be recovering okay from a kind of... Ironically, the most successful show of theirs in 2017 was Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., where they brought in Ghost Rider and so on. You know, they had Inhumans. Did not go well. But
who doesn't love Ghost Rider? Who doesn't, like, even like the movies that weren't great, you still watched them and enjoyed them.
I love
that's
the
a
design
great character.
and concept of Ghost Rider a lot. Like, it's one of my favorite looking characters in comics because it's just so cool. He's a burning skeleton riding a Harley with a whip and chain. How can you not like that?
Exactly. If he's not your first choice on Marvel versus Capcom, then we can't talk.
Didn't we see Ghost Rider, the first one, in theaters like just before I went to the Caribbean?
Yes.
I know my parents were like, why are you seeing that movie before you... What? Like, perfect timing, don't worry.
I don't know that I was in the group, but I know that happened.
I think
And then when my husband and I were dating, he insisted on seeing the second one, IMAX 3D.
The only thing I remember about the second one is he pees fire.
It's so funny. My husband was so dead set. He's like, no, we have to see it in the biggest screen possible. And I was like, okay, honey. Okay. I love you. Okay. the things you do for your spouse.
But last year, of course, we had Iron Fist, which did not go very well. We had Luke Cage, which did go well. We had The Defenders, which people were mixed to okay on.
I was lukewarm on it. I enjoyed it.
I liked the Defenders a lot. I enjoyed the highlights of Iron Fist quite a bit. Like the story Iron Fist was telling, I liked. I just didn't think they told it very well. So I'm looking forward to what they do with season 2, because they have a new showrunner and everything. But this year we've had The Punisher, which I thought The Punisher was a decent show. I just thought it fit terribly in the MCU because once aliens invade New York, you cannot have military is going to change. The world is going to change. It's not going to be the same type of military and fighting style.
Right, which is why I like they went kind of that direction in Spider-Man.
Yes. And so, like, Punisher was fine as a show, but not good as part of the MCU. Jessica Jones, I am partially through right now. I like it. I know there's people are somewhat divided on it, but Jessica Jones season 1 was so good, it's kind of hard to keep that same level in the second season. It's hard. Making TV shows consistent is hard. But then we get...
Yeah. I'm only a couple episodes in, but I'm still enjoying it. I don't enjoy it any less than I did last season, that's for sure. I wish I had more time so I could watch it more, but I agree with you. It's still very enjoyable. I think it's more watchable than Defenders so far. Not that I didn't enjoy Defenders, I did. But so far, this one would be easier for me to just sit and binge.
Plus, well, the issue with the Defenders is, you know how like every Marvel show is like different colors, you know, they have different colored filters to represent the characters and different stories. The Defenders mashed all those together, and it didn't always work as well. They did focus on what I think is the best show of the Marvel Netflix universe, which is getting a season 3 this year, that being Daredevil. But it's kind of hard to mash all those styles together when they're all very different shows. But Daredevil season 3 is coming this year, and Luke Cage season 2. So there's a little bit of something for everyone, and I think that's great.
Oh yeah, Marvel is playing the field. They want everybody to be interested, and that's something that I really like about at least my Marvel fandom friends, is that from everyone, from the casual fans to the diehard fans, everybody's very happy to talk about it no matter what their level of interest is.
And if, you know, Marvel's MCU isn't your thing, there is other Marvel coming out this year. There's Deadpool 2 with Cable. You have in the Spider-Man universe, the Venom spinoff with
Tom Hardy.
With Tom Hardy as Eddie Brock, which I need to see more. That first trailer was okay.
It was just a teaser. I mean, it was intriguing, which is what teasers are meant to do. So it served its purpose, but I want more. You're absolutely correct.
You also have in December Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, the animated one that came from the Lego movie People, Phil Lord and Chris Miller, with Shameik Moore from Criminal Minds as Miles Morales. You have Lee Schreiber in there, Mahershala Ali. Animated Spider-Man with the Spider-Verse. It looks pretty good. And then you also have in November Dark Phoenix, X-Men, like where they've been building this current X-Men trilogy series into. So there's a lot of Marvel for people, and there are X-Men shows on TV. You have The Gifted, which I quite enjoyed. It feels very much like Bryan Singer's original trilogy X-Men, doing pretty well on NBC, or is that Fox? I hit the microphone.
We can edit that out.
Yes, I will. On Fox, The Gifted on Fox, and then on FX you have that weird Dan Stevens one with Legion.
I've heard so many good things. I just haven't had the time.
If you want adult X-Men mind mess with your mind stuff, that is the one to watch. My goodness. If you don't want to think about your shows, don't watch it because it'll hurt. But you have that one. So there's tons of good stuff, no matter what you want to do. And there are some animated movies coming out too. So there's a lot of great stuff for Marvel fans. And there's not a D23 this year, but that means Marvel's going to be at San Diego Comic-Con in force. So look forward to that.
Oh, I do. I really, really do. I have an event at work that happens about the same time as Comic-Con, and as long as I'm working that event, I know I'll never be able to go to SDCC, and it makes me so sad.
And then on the other side of that one, DC. There is stuff to be excited for DC. While the Justice League did not do as well as they wanted, and DC film-wise is a bit confused, We will go over that in our sister show called crap. I just forgot what it's called. Oh, Let's Talk Fandom. Well, let me do that again. So we'll be going over the DC stuff in our sister show called Let's Talk Fandom, which is where we're going to go into more detail about some of these topics. But DC has a movie coming out this year. They have Aquaman, directed by the director of The Conjuring and Insidious, being James Wan. And don't worry, he has shown that he can work with big franchises. He made Furious 7 possible. If any film was doomed, my goodness, Furious 7 had everything going against it. So he made that happen. And he's pretty safe as far as being tampered with because the new head of DC Films is his producing partner for all his other movies. So I don't think the producer from every film he's done is going to be like, I'm sorry, we're going to take the edit away from the movie, re-edit it, and bring in a new director and redo it, okay? Bye. I think he's pretty safe. I just hope that they fix certain Atlantis special effects they had in Justice League, such as the bubble.
That was such a nice way to put that.
Did you see Justice League?
No.
Okay. In Atlantis, to talk, they make a giant bubble around themselves and then talk. That needs to go away. No.
Okay.
But I think
okay, all right.
that concept needs to go away. But the character's great. I love Jason Momoa in Justice League. He was having a lot of fun. It's fun having a surfer bro. And Amber Heard as Mira seems about perfect. We didn't get Willem Dafoe in Justice League like it was supposed to be. They cut him out. But he's going to be in this one. Patrick Wilson's in this one. Tamara Morrison's in this one. Dolph Lundgren, Nicole Kidman. And the music composer for Wonder Woman. So
Nice.
There's just so much to like, and it's Aquaman. It's going to be something that a lot of people are going to come into without any preconceived notions. So it's not going to be like Batman going, this isn't my Batman, or this isn't my Superman. People are like, this isn't like, was it Justice Friends? Where's Aquaman? Aquaman's not clean. Aquaman's not cleaning the Tower of Justice right now. Is he playing with fish? How many preconceived notions are you going to have about Aquaman? Just go in there and have fun. Hopefully.
I just think of that episode of South Park with the super best friends.
Super Friends, that's what it's called.
Super best friends and Seaman. That's all I can think about. I'm an adult.
And the first Aquaman trailer is going to debut at WonderCon this month.
Woohoo!
I believe on the 24th it's going to debut. So we'll get to see some footage, and I think that'll be quite telling. But of course, with DC, you also have half of the CW, quite literally, with Black Lightning, Supergirl, Flash, Arrow, Legends of Tomorrow. I probably missed something in there. Vixen, Constantine. You have a lot of great stuff in there. Some of those are on CW Seed, if you're confused. And then you have, the animated stuff like, Teen Titans Go is getting a movie this year. And Teen Titans Go has been doing quite well for them. You have Justice League Action there and Gotham on Fox. You have a lot of stuff, DC fans, to be excited for. And there's DC animated movies. You already had 2 this year, if I recall right. One of them I actually just picked up from the library because I'm going to be watching it. I'm in Gotham by Gaslight, which is this steampunk Elseworld one where Batman fights Jack the Ripper. Have you ever seen Gotham by Gaslight?
I have not.
Do you know the comic?
No. I am not. I don't do a lot of DC. I'm so sorry.
I think this one you'd quite like because it
sounds interesting.
Think Victorian era Gotham City with Batman as a Victorian era Batman trying to find Jack the Ripper with Selena Kyle as his co-detective.
Okay.
And it's awesome. If you want to watch this one, folks, it is not for kids. I'm going to warn you. It's rated R for a reason, so be careful. But it's great. And then, of course, you also have a Suicide Squad animated movie, Hell to Pay, coming out. You have The Death of Superman coming out towards the end of the year. And who knows what they're going to announce later. You had Batman Brave and the Bold with Scooby-Doo also this year. So there's a lot. Let's have fun. They're having fun.
Also, Scoobernatural.
Supernatural and Scooby-Doo. That's going to be so great.
The Scooby Natural, I think, is what they ended up calling it. But either way,
it's going to be great. Moving on to other fandoms. Harry Potter. it's a pretty good time to be a Harry Potter fan. You have Hogwarts at both parks now, Universal on each coast. Do you have Hogsmeade at both parks, or is it just Hogwarts at both?
There's Hogsmeades at both because I've been to the Orlando one and the California one. I think there's also one at Universal Japan.
So there's those parks are doing well. There's lots of great stuff there. Pottermore has been growing. Last year you got 2 Harry Potter books. One, albeit, was a stage play. Was it last year or the year before? Well, recent years you got 2 Harry Potter books. One was a stage play script. The other one was the novelization of the Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find the movie. And this year you get another Fantastic Beasts movie, The Crimes of Grindelwald, which continues that one, albeit with some controversy.
Yeah.
And I think this is time to have our break for our focus of the episode. Johnny Depp. La, 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 la.
Well, not acting specifically. Let's just go off of that. Johnny Depp has been nothing short of a pariah as far as films. I mean, name a movie he's been in the last 10 years that's not Pirates of the Caribbean that did well in the box office.
Well, we won't go 10. We'll go 5, because if you go 10, you have Alice in Wonderland, and which made $1 billion.
Yes, but that wasn't a Johnny Depp movie. That was Johnny Depp and many, many other people. But like Black Mass had Benedict Cumberbatch, and that still didn't do well. Although not a fun topic, but still like could have done better.
Rango, I think, was pretty successful, decently successful. Not, but not. 21, I guess, Dark Shadows, not so much. Lone Ranger, no. Transcendence, God, no.
Yeah, exactly.
Into the Woods, but that wasn't really him. He was there.
Yeah, he was there for half a second.
Fantastic Beasts doesn't really count because he was present.
And I don't think he's a bad actor. I think he's a very good actor. I think he's just picking roles that aren't right for him.
Murder on the Orient Express was quite good. We saw it the other day. I quite enjoyed that one. I'd never seen the original. But my wife and I both quite enjoyed that one, and he played his role. Even though that's not really like the only lead in that one's Kenneth Branagh. Everything else is like just there's an ensemble cast. But he was on that one. That one did pretty well. But beyond that, beyond Pirates of the Caribbean movies, nothing really big.
And it's like I said, I don't know that he's a bad actor. I think it might just be him taking roles that aren't right.
And of course, as we mentioned in the focus, he's had a lot of
yeah, and then we'll go to the personal controversy.
Yeah, he's had personal issues, which will probably dog him for a while, but it hasn't killed his career yet, like you could say Kevin Spacey has. Dead. Coffin.
R.I.P.
But Harry Potter, that movie, I think the trailer looks really good. I think seeing Dumbledore in there, seeing Hogwarts in there, this is the type of Harry Potter that I always wanted. Reading the books and seeing the other movies is I wanted something like this. I wanted to expand out. I wanted to see the adults. I wanted to see the Aurors in action. I wanted to see all this, but in the original ones, you couldn't really see those because you're focusing on the kids in a school. Now we get to see those, and I am quite excited. I think Newt Scamander's a great character. I'm glad that they're bringing back, what's his name? Danny Fogler, Fogler's character. In this one, Jacob Kowalski.
Yes.
I'm glad they're bringing him back. That's great. I love the leading ladies. Catherine Waterston is fun, and
Zoe Kravitz.
Yeah, Zoe Kravitz. Alison Sudol is Queenie. I think she's a lot of fun. I'm glad they're bringing him back, and I do agree with some people that says I wish it was Johnny Depp turned into Colin Farrell versus Colin Farrell turning into Johnny Depp. But hey, we got what we got, and I, for one, think these movies are a lot of fun.
I also think they're a lot of fun. The last one was just amazing. It felt like Harry Potter for grown-ups.
Yes.
And I'm saying that not just from my point of view, but because the little girl next to me looked at her dad part the way through the movie and said, "I'm a child. This is too scary for me."
Though I do find it hilarious.
I looked at the guy. I'm like, "Go, dude. She told you."
I find it hilarious when people are like, book adaptations of 2018, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Like, that's not adapting a book. That is a 40-page little booklet about animals. This is not a book adaptation.
Wasn't it like a field guide kind of thing?
It was Newt Scamander's field guide.
That's what I thought.
You get to see those animals, though. And in this trailer, you get to see more of them, which looks great.
Anyhow, J.K. Rowling is slowly writing herself out of being one of my favorite authors. Like, I will always eternally be indebted to her because she gave us Harry Potter. But her little note, like I told you, said essentially, I don't support domestic violence, but I also don't think it's a deal breaker. So here's Johnny Depp. Is weird, and it sits weird with me, and I don't know that I'll be seeing this in the theaters just because I don't know that I can support it, which is such a bummer because it looks so good.
I know I for one will, but I think this I can't say no. Well, I don't know if I'll see it in theaters. I don't know if there'll be a theater near me by that time, but we'll get into that in the future. But Harry Potter, pretty good shape. Anime, I think it's the last fandom we're going to cover for today. Anime, mixed bag, would you say?
Oh yeah.
For everything Netflix gives us that's great anime-wise, Voltron, so a lot of their whole huge anime section they have of exclusives. They give us stuff like live-action Death Note and live-action Full Metal Alchemist, which just hurts our souls.
I just, well, we need to get Neil Kaplan back on the show because things happen this season and I want to talk about them.
Yes, we
Voltron, of Voltron. And we're still waiting on that second season of Castlevania.
Which is coming, yeah.
Which is coming, and I'm very excited about.
8 episodes.
8 full episodes. What was the last one? 3? 4?
4.
Oof.
There's a tease the entire time.
Well, I get it. It was supposed to be, I think it was supposed to be a movie, and then they ended up turning it into a miniseries. Still, huge bummer. I want more. That was not nearly enough.
And, but, I'll say this about live action Full Metal Alchemist and Death Note. Just don't watch them. Watch the show. They're also on Netflix, so just don't watch them. They're really bad. Think Dragon Ball Evolution bad.
Ooh, that bad, huh?
Yeah, they're pretty bad.
Yipes, stripes.
I will say Ghost in a Shell I thought was a decent enough movie. At least you can say with Ghost in a Shell is it's competently made, looks really good, and they got people in there who can do the part. Like, the worst parts about Death Note and Full Metal Alchemist was like, it just, A, looked terrible, and B, the actors weren't very good.
Mm.
I can enjoy Ghost in a Shell for what it is. It's not great, it's not bad either. It's right. A very pretty movie that has good actors in it that can divert you for 2 hours.
There you go. If you're just looking to exit reality for a couple hours and not worry about it, there you go.
And I am waiting for them to finally do another season of Knights of Sidonia. They own the rights to the entire manga, and they haven't done another season for 3 years. You own everything, and they have already announced they're going to do it, so just give us one already. Put it on. Do it. You bought the rights. Show us more. I need to know that is one weird anime if you haven't watched it. It's it's one of the mecha ones, but then there's like, I don't know if this is appropriate to say on the air, so I won't, but it gets weird. There's some weird Oh Japan moments in that one.
Sorry. Oh Japan.
But there's some good stuff. Dragon Ball Super, they announced Dragon Ball Super is ending this month after its pretty fantastic run and 2 movies that have come out, done really well in theaters. They announced that Dragon Ball Super, though it's ending, is not ending. There is a movie coming out called Dragon Ball Super, which is going to continue the story and will be in theaters, which is great. Great for fans. They're continuing it. They realize that Dragon Ball Z is a cash cow, and why should they ever give it up? And they're kind of rewriting the ending of Dragon Ball Z, which, for those who don't know, when I watched Dragon Ball Z, the original time, the ending kind of skips forward a bit, and then it's kind of like an epilogue episode. The ending just made me so angry, it almost ruined the show for me, because it does a lot of stupid things. They basically erased that, because the creator of the show basically said, I didn't like that either. It's misguided, so they undid it, which is great. Dragon Ball Super does crazy things, but that's what you expect. It's Dragon Ball Z, for crying out loud. But, yeah. And, of course, Hulu's doing their own shows. Oh, that's one thing we also forgot when it comes to Marvel. Don't forget, Runaways is on Hulu. I know lots of people forgot about it. I forgot about it. I didn't know it was airing, but it's on Hulu. And it includes the Velociraptor, in case you're wondering, because that's the most important part of Runaways, is the Velociraptor.
I mean, what show is complete without a Velociraptor? None, I say.
Every show needs a Velociraptor.
Every show needs a Velociraptor. This show needs a Velociraptor, Jerry. We got to get on this.
Law and Order, Velociraptor.
Velociraptor. Dun dun.
So I solved a case by finding the perp, and then I ate his face. But looks like fandom's in pretty good shape, and our goal of this show is we're going to be focusing on fandoms, on different topics on different people and different guests. And our guest this week is a man who is focused a lot on Star Wars fandom, though he's also done a lot of military science fiction. He's done stuff in the Battletech world. So why don't we skip now to our guest of the week?
We, the humble custodians of the Fanitarium, bear witness to the opening of its poster-covered doors only when graced with the presence of a true paragon of geekdom. And this month, we welcome into our humble sanctuary of all things fandom-friendly just such an exemplar of the wild imagination we so cherish. For this month, we are joined by none other than the illustrious Michael Stackpole. Mr. Stackpole is responsible for the penning of no less than 46 novels, 14 of which are set in the Battletech universe, including his Warrior trilogy, Warrior on Guard, Warrior Riposte, and Warrior Coupe, and 8 set in none other than the legendary Star Wars universe, wherein he chronicled a struggling New Republic's desperate resistance against the merciless onslaught of the Yuuzhan Vong. But to limit our introduction of our honored guest to his literary accomplishments only would be to neglect his other equally indelible and lasting contributions to the whole of our beloved geekdom. For you see, dear listeners, Mr. Stackpole also carries with him the distinguished credential of having designed not only Mercenaries, Spies, and Private Eyes, a tabletop role-playing game routinely cited by industry experts as a classic, but that of having been directly involved in the design of such classic staples of the computer gaming industry as Bard's Tale 3, Neuromancer, and yes, the venerable precursor to the inarguably iconic post-apocalyptic role-playing franchise we know and love as Fallout, Wasteland. As if this were somehow not enough, those looking to benefit from the wisdom of such a prominent artisan of imagination can glean insights into how to harness their own muses with Mr. Stackpole's online newsletter and podcast, The Secrets, in which our guest discusses tips and tricks on managing writing as a career, crafting one's own universes, and, of course, breaking down that universal creative nemesis, writer's block. Is it any wonder, then, dear listeners, that our doors should leap open with the excitement of fans meeting their idols upon his arrival at our front porch? It is our honor to welcome you, Mr. Stackpole. We humbly invite you to step inside that we may cast the glittering projections of your contributions to culture upon our domed ceiling and enjoy the honor of your company and conversation. Welcome, good sir, to the Fanitarium.
So listeners, it is my pleasure to welcome to the show an author who I've been a fan of since I was, I don't know, probably 5 or 6. And who's never been on the show before in any of our past versions. So welcome to the show, Mr. Michael Stackpole.
Hey, I'm glad to be here. So you started reading me when you were 5 or 6? Were you being read to?
My oldest brother collected Star Wars books when it first started, and then he would read some to me. And
okay.
I think the first Star Wars books I got into, because we kind of like flipped the book a little bit. He collected all the way up until like New Jedi Order, and then I took over from there.
Okay. Well,
and
very
so
good.
It just saved us money, I guess. We just made sure we didn't double book it.
Please thank him for me.
Will do. He is currently in Chile, and he'll be listening to this interview when I put it up in a couple of days.
All right. Well, that's great.
Yeah, and so the first books I've read of yours were the X-Wing ones, of course, but the first one I ever owned was one of your Ghost Bear books with Battletech, which, well, I'm glad Mech Warrior's coming back. Yeah. So today we have a lot of questions from listeners and questions that I put together, so we're going to do a good mix of them. One of them is, I guess we're just going to start it this way. One of my friends wanted to be with us today, but he actually just got on a submarine. So he sent me this for you. I think this is a good way to start off. He says, first of all, this is from Gabe. Thank you for writing the Rogue Squadron novels. They are incredible and are actually going to sea with me as I'm being deployed today. Second, with the new Battletech game releasing this year, a tactical Kickstarted one, and MechWarrior 5 in development, do you foresee a return to writing Battletech novels for yourself or others of the old guard, or perhaps a new batch of novels with new authors?
Well, I suspect that there are definitely going to be new novels, and there are plenty of very good authors out there who I think could do a good job in writing in that universe. I would love to come back, provided my schedule actually syncs up. Literally last week I was at a show in Reno and talking to Lauren Coleman of Catalyst about what their plans are. So if things work out, that would be absolutely great. I would be happy to do it. And I think, yeah, definitely there should be more novels.
it must be exciting to see MechWarrior Battletech actually be coming back, because it's been a long time since we've had a proper MechWarrior or Battletech anything.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's part of the problem you get when you have an intellectual property that's been owned by a number of companies is just straightening out the rights. And this is what we spent a lot of time doing in 2016, was ironing out a lot of the rights stuff with Topps, because I think I'd written under 3 different sets of contracts. So trying to make sure all that stuff synced up was kind of a pain. But now that great chunks of that have been taken care of, and I guess there are a few other details that have to be tacked down. But in theory, there should be plenty of stuff going forward.
That's what I hope. Like, because as I said, like one of the first novel of yours I ever wrote was one of your Battletech ones, where I believe it was Clan Ghost Bear was the main one in that book, and that really got me into MechWarrior and Battletech, because you got to get behind the pilots. You weren't just piloting your own like you are in the games, but you got to get behind, what the clans were, how the society works, because it is far more complex than you would usually realize in some of these games. That you're operating a cool giant mechanized robot, and you get to shoot lots of cool giant mechanized robots.
Well, this is the thing that fiction has always really helped out with when you're looking at games, and Battletech is an excellent example because it's a board game. And there really isn't that much to characters and characterization in a board game. But when you have a fairly rich universe and you can write fiction to really flesh it out, it adds some depth to the experience. And I think a lot of people don't actually realize that if they are, in fact, reading the books, that just the factions that they like or characters they like really color how they feel when they're actually playing the game.
Indeed. And, you have an extra special connection to Battletech because, not only did you get to write in a large part of it, but you also designed the Wolfhound, which is one of, well, I know it's your favorite mech on your website, but, it's a fan favorite mech that's hopefully coming back in the newer games, or at least a variation of it, since they like to vary the designs a bit.
Sure. Yeah, that would be fun. When I started working on Battletech, I figured that I wouldn't understand the complete experience unless I went ahead and designed a mech. So I designed the Wolfhound, and the guys at FASTA sort of refined that design, made sure that it worked within the rules. And I have heard from people who have enjoyed using it in tournaments and stuff. So I'm glad it's a useful piece of the universe.
So when you say design it, does that mean like you drew it out, or did you actually like get the inner workings of it as well and work on like the engineering side of a design? Like, how does it actually function, or just the look?
Oh, no, I did the engineering stuff. I did the same. I mean, I just used the rules in the rule booklet on how to design a mech and just built it out. And one of the things which I had seen is that you have 2 problems with mechs which have ammo. 1, they can run out, and 2, the ammo can explode. So I figured for a sort of a long-range reconnaissance like mech, having something that wasn't going to require resupply for ammo would probably be a good idea. Hence, the Wolfhound was born. Plus, right at that time, we were looking at moving away from the entropy-based universe where everything was falling apart, because that really doesn't have a long future, to a place where people were beginning to recover and design new things, which is a wise idea for the universe. And also, if you're selling books and toys, new things help sell more. So it all kind of dovetailed together pretty well.
That's awesome. So here's another listener question. You grew up in a family with military members. Did this affect how you're able to write military science fiction so well, because you knew how these people felt with family members serving in the military, or people they knew, or themselves serving in the military, as well as your degree in history? Did this help inform your writing in that regard?
Oh, absolutely. In addition to growing up with my brother, who was spent 32 years in the Army as a infantry officer, I know plenty of people who've also served in the military, and I've talked to people as well as reading biographies of and military history. So you sort of get you use the family context as a basis and a foundation, and then you just keep adding material in. this is one of the things that I think works with every author. They're constantly doing research, whether it's digging deeply into a subject to inform themselves as to what's going on so they can write it, as well as just everything you drag in, chance conversations, suddenly contribute to this wealth of knowledge you've got, which then go back into what you're writing. Because ultimately, if what I write doesn't strike someone who's been in that situation as accurate, then I've failed. And they'll never read me again. And I'm not doing a service for the people who don't have that experience, who read what I'm writing and think, oh, this is the way that it is. So I really do my best to get all the details as right as I can, and rely on friends and family if I've got a question to go ahead and sort of fill things in for me, so I actually know what I'm writing about.
So continuing on that question, they say, in your X-Wing books and in your Battletech books and your other work, a lot of your action is very flowing and very moving, and people move kind of like the way birds do. I recently heard that you were a huge fan of hockey. Has your fan of hockey affected how you write movement in your novels? Because it seems to make a lot of sense, listening to how hockey players play and how they report it, that a lot of your hockey experience might actually relate to how you've written action in your books.
Well, my hockey experience was pretty much limited to, the equivalent of basically youth leagues, and then I played a little intramural in college. I certainly have enjoyed it, and I've enjoyed playing a lot of different sports, so lacrosse, and I used to play soccer for many, many years, and even just dancing and learning how to dance, swing, and salsa. Get you used to these, to how your body moves. And I think it's really important, especially when you're writing action scenes, to make sure that you got that sense. When you read a lot of books, they'll tell you what a character sees and what a character hears, and a lot of times they don't use very much in the way of the other senses. Kinesthetics or movement, where your body is in space, is really, really evocative, because you think about it, we're constantly aware of where our body is in space. One of the most terrifying things you can experience is to be falling, because you've got no control over where you are. So being able to get those sensations down correctly, I think is really, really important. So I'd say, all the physical activity that I've done down through the years is contributes to that. I think the other thing is that, especially with fight scenes or with the X-Wing, with the dogfight scenes, I spent a lot of time, with X-Wing, a lot of time on the X-Wing and TIE Fighter simulators, but also just, watching documentaries about fighter pilots, talking to fighter pilots, watching documentaries about acrobatic flying, and getting those sense of things and making it all work, so that I could translate it really well, and hopefully readers were, felt like they were in the cockpit as things were going on.
That makes an awful lot of sense, and I can relate to some of your action and so on, because you're in Arizona, I'm in Arizona, up in Flagstaff, where we're supposed to get snow, but we haven't really this year. But being in Arizona, I remember reading one of your Battletech books recently, and there's the terrain here is very different than a lot of the rest of the U.S. And so a lot of it I can imagine coming out of your brain after coming to places like the West, because the terrain is so different and ground is so different that it fits a lot of these science fiction novels. I can imagine the giant robots going over the rocky formations, or the giant crag valleys we have here in Arizona, that, being from the Midwest, which my wife's actually from Wisconsin, she's from Waukesha, she's there right now, and so it's very different. And a lot of your books terrain-wise seem to come straight out of places like Arizona, where it's just so science fiction-like in terrain.
Well, I mean, let's face it, Arizona is half Mars and half Dune. So yeah, it is. And I grew up in Vermont, so, it is entirely different. But it does make you aware that there are lots of different terrains, and there are lots of different things you can do. And I think that that's also really, really important. For science fiction, you want a sense of the alien, you want a sense that we're not in Kansas anymore. And certainly having these formations here helps, I think, a lot with that.
Let's get to another listener question. This one is from my co-host Kay.
In an interview you did at Dragon Con 2016 with Star Wars Explained, you were talking about your writing, and you said that you want new challenges and new cool things. So what new challenges have you encountered lately, and what new cool things should we be looking forward to?
The big challenge, and the thing that I'm doing right now, is I'm telling stories in a serial format. I have a Patreon project called Scratch, where I'm going ahead and serializing stories, which is different than taking a story that already exists and just breaking it down into chapters. This is actually writing in the serial format, which has got its own challenges and it's got its own differences. There are cool things you can do and things that you really can't do as compared to a novel. You know, back in the 1850s and before, because there were not a lot of books published, but there were a lot of magazines being published and a lot of stories were published in newspapers, you would see this serial breakdown where at the end of, each episode or at the end of each chapter, it would very much be a cliffhanger because you had to get the readers to come back that next month. And so I've spent the last several years reading a lot about that, reading a lot of the early serials, kind of breaking stuff down. And especially in today's age where a lot of us are reading on portable devices and a lot of us are reading in and around other things where we're not necessarily having the time to carve out and spend, 5 hours, reading a book from front to back. The shorter episodic stories, I think, are a lot more conducive to readers just being able to pick them up. And I've been having a blast doing this, both writing serials in fantasy world as a sequel to my novel Talion Revenant. I'm doing the second book that I'd always envisioned doing, called Talion Nemesis, but I'm doing it as a serial, which has meant sort of rethinking the project from where it was. But literally, 25 years ago, I had written I think about 28,000 words worth of the novel, of the sequel. And now to tell it in this format, I've got to go back and probably very little of that material will actually be useful to me. But I'm just having a blast doing that, as well as stories tied in my superhero universe from my novel In Hero Years I'm Dead. So that's the big challenge now. I think the other thing is that, again, because of the new digital age and the way stuff is really accelerated, I really have to do more work faster, which is, to me, kind of chilling because I'm a fairly fast writer anyway. But the fact is that the turnaround time that publishers want is a lot quicker, and that's because readers want stuff now. In the past, when people would be content to wait a year on a project or might grumble a little bit, now they're not waiting. If it's a year between books coming out, people have totally forgotten that they were waiting on a book. So now it's got to be a little bit faster. So
a question about the time scale. I've had a lot of Star Wars authors on it. It seems like the more recent ones, they're given even less. They're given weeks, maybe a couple of months to write a book, while the older ones seem to be given a little more time. So from when you very first started writing X-Wing books to the last one you wrote in the Star Wars series a couple decades later, I guess it was, did that time scale get tighter and tighter and tighter every time, or did they let you write at your pace?
Well, it's kind of funny because it wasn't a couple of decades. It was literally, the 8 novels that I did came out between 96 and 2000. So it was only 4 years. First X-Wing books came out, I had 4 months to do each one. So that was a fairly tight schedule. And, that year and a half was a grind. But they were so much fun to write and they flowed so easily one to the other that was not really a big problem. It does not surprise me that time has gotten a little bit tighter, mainly because of 2 factors. One, again, a lot of bookstores are treating books almost as if they're magazines. You know, if a magazine's on the stand and it's the November issue and the December issue comes out, that November issue goes away. And so there are a lot of books where you have literally that phenomenon. If it's released in November and you don't see it in the bookstore, you may not see it in December. So that is a difficulty. So the idea of getting books out faster so that you will be able to continue sales, you'll always have, say, a Star Wars or a Star Trek or a book in a series available. That's really, there's a lot of pressure there. And I would also imagine that with Disney taking over, just the difference between when Bantam was doing the books and Del Rey was doing the books, the layers of bureaucracy that get labeled, get seated on approval means that you've got less and less time to get the books out because the outlines have to be approved, and then multiple people have to read the books and approve what's going on, and they have to coordinate with others. So I can also see time compression there. You know, I don't envy anybody that, but by the same token, I have to say, if you're a professional writer and you sign a contract and it's got that deadline on it, it's not like it's a big surprise to you. If you're going to say you're going to take the job, you know, then you do the job.
That is true. One more question about those deadlines. You know, you said you got 4 months each for the original X-Wing books. And then in 2000, that's when you did 2 entries in the first mega series that they did with New Jedi Order. Was the timeline a bit different when you got to take, because your books seem to fit in quite well, because you were basically writing the characters you knew and loved for all these years, but like you were moving into a different series where you had a lot more layers of bureaucracy, I guess you could say, and a lot more pieces moving at the same time. Was the process writing those 2 books, Dark Tide 1 and 2, significantly different than writing your X-Wing books that you were kind of in charge of yourself?
It wasn't, only because they brought me in to help plan the New Jedi Order. So I was part of the team that Del Rey brought in, and they knew from the beginning that I was going to be doing Onslaught and Ruin. I was going to be doing the Dark Tide set. So because I was involved with that, and we planned out by and large what was going to happen over 5 years, and rather specifically what was going to happen in the first year and a half, I pretty much knew what was going on. So that I was not in a bad situation there. It's very much parallel to the situation that I've been in with Battletech. You know, being on the development team means that you can help shape the future, and then the work that you do sort of solidifies that future going forward. So for me, it was, yes, I was working in someone else's universe, but by the same token, they gave me a little bit more access to what was going on and a little bit of control over what was going on. So I felt really, really comfortable with it.
Okay. And was part of the control and trying to like spread out the work the reason why, I believe it's Dark Tide Siege, the one that was canceled and kind of split up into your books, and then Luceno had more time to do his. Was that kind of like more the team thing, or was it just really didn't fit into what you guys were trying to do?
That was actually a disagreement. You have to remember that the Yuuzhan Vong books, the New Jedi Order books, were the first books that Del Rey had done.
Okay.
And Del Rey's procedure was different than Bantam's had been. And I had a disagreement with the editor over the editing of Onslaught. And we mutually agreed that the 3-book contract would become a 2-book contract. I'm sure I no more wanted how they were editing it than they wanted to have to edit me. So we had a little bit of creative difference, but I'm still very proud of those 2 books. And I for me, the interesting thing about those books was I really got, in my mind, I got to have Corran come to a stopping point. You know, I had taken him from being somebody who understood he had no Jedi heritage all the way to, by the end of Ruin, somebody who realized just, you know, the traps, the pitfalls, the downside of all of this stuff. So he'd come through a full story arc, and I was content to let go at that point. If I was given a shot to go back and play with him again, I'd be happy to. Or if they reintroduce him and they want, you know, something of a reboot, I'd be happy to do that. But I was content with what was going on, and that was a mutually agreed upon decision. So
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's not like that series didn't have other books fall by the way. There was a trilogy that fell by the way, and other pieces that just didn't come together in the end. But they got, what, 19 books out ultimately? So that's really impressive over, what, 4 years, I think it was. That was a really expensive time for buying books.
Yes, yes.
Um, okay, let's get to another listener one.
Mr. Stackpole, this is Gary Bloom, your super fan, I suppose. And I'd love to know if we're going to get another book for the Crown Colonies. That is an awesome series.
Eventually. Those books ran afoul of a situation where the publisher got sold, and so the new publisher has never given me a schedule as to when they wanted the Crown Colonies book, the third one. So that is a problem that eventually will get dealt with. I suspect either I will go ahead and do it again, as part of Scratch, or they'll eventually come back and say, hey, we actually do want this book. Please come and finish this contract.
And I imagine, since we're in an age where there's ebooks, there's fewer bookstores now. Back when I was a kid, I got all my books from Walden's Books. That doesn't exist anymore. Borders is gone.
Sure.
There's Barnes and Noble's the main big one, and Amazon, of course, is the king of books right now, I guess. I imagine it's really hard knowing that books get out of print really quickly. You have to rely a lot on ebooks, which is a very different sort of contract. How has book publishing has it gotten harder for you in a lot of ways, or has ebooks and the changes it's actually made it kind of easier as a writer, getting rid of the financial side of things, since I know that's a totally different ballpark right now?
Right. It's really a mixed bag. I mean, if you look at book sales down through the past 40 years, book sales are constantly slipping. And they're constantly slipping because there are other forms of entertainment. So we're in constant competition with movies, with TV, with on-demand television shows, all those sorts of things. That being said, digital publishing does make it easier for authors to gain control of their own careers and decide what they want to do. I'm still doing books that are being published traditionally. By the same token, and at the same time, I can go ahead and do something like Scratch, or I can have a novel like In Hero Years I'm Dead, and I can put that out all by myself. So this gives us a lot more power. And as a lot of authors have said, when they started putting their backlist out on digital, all of a sudden selling on Amazon, I have a monthly cash flow, which never had before, because authors only get paid twice a year. So this gives us a little bit more stability in what we're doing, and that's kind of cool. The other thing with digital is we can publish our stuff a lot faster. We don't have to worry about only having 2 books coming out a year, or if we're faster than that, you need to work with a pseudonym because publishers don't want us to have too many books out there, lest we devalue the product or devalue the brand. So I think it's great. The overall downtrend in the market ultimately means there's trouble, but there's still a lot of people that are buying books out there, so we can still make a living.
This one comes from listener Rich, and he says, what advice do you have for an 11-year-old who desperately wants to get into game testing and design?
Boy, 1, learn how to program a computer. 2, learn how to do art. 3, start looking at colleges that have game degree programs. I mean, when I got out of college, my degree is in history. And when I got out of college, no one would have given you a degree in game design. And now there are some very credible programs that will, in fact, give you that sort of degree and give you that practical experience. And they're all over the country. I know Full Sail down in Florida's got one. Champlain College in Burlington, Vermont, where I grew up, has got one. So you can find truly academic programs that would get you close to what you want. So that would be my guess, or my best suggestion.
Since you're writing so often, do you ever have time to read? And have you ever experienced reader's block?
I do have time to read, and I travel way too much on airplanes, so I have plenty of time to read. I've never really experienced reader block, just because I tend to be curious, and so there's always something I can read, whether it's a history or literally just going out to like the Gutenberg Project or archives.org and finding books that have been rescued by libraries from obscurity from 150 years ago. One of the things that I spent a lot of time reading are some of the old serials that back in the 1830s, 40s, 50s, 1880s up through, all over that Dickens era and stuff. There were these wonderful penny dreadfuls, stories about highwaymen and their exploits. They're not terribly well written, and in reading them over, I can see at least 3 teams of writers working on these serials, because they were grinding out a lot of words per week. But they're fun. They're engaging. And I guess as a writer, I have a certain amount of professional curiosity on those things. And then just as a human being, I've got a lot of curiosity on high-tech stuff, on literally right now I'm reading Russian Roulette by David Korn and Michael Isikoff about the Russian interference in the elections. So, I'm finding that fascinating just because of the high-tech components there and all the other stuff going on. And all that stuff, my novels have got a lot of politics in them. So reading something like this will end up informing what I do with novels in the future.
Awesome. And one continuation under that one, also from Case.
What is your favorite underappreciated book or novel? Not specifically one that you've written, but just one that you've read and enjoyed over the years.
Wow. That is, that's really, really tough. I'm not necessarily sure it's underappreciated, but Dennis L. McKiernan, fantasy writer, did a novel called Dragon Doom. I hope it's still available. And that was just a brilliant book. He was very successful in taking, Dennis is a great writer, and he was really successful in taking the readers through this wonderful emotional roller coaster. So I would heartily recommend that.
Dragon Doom. Okay. Let's see here. A couple more listener questions. This listener says, with the resurgence of a lot of your stuff that you've worked on over the years, such as MechWarrior and Star Wars, especially with Star Wars, what is it like seeing a time period or type of universe that you worked so hard in, seeing ideas or elements of that put to the big screen in a way that we never thought would have happened in the past?
Oh, I think it's great. I've enjoyed, with Star Wars in particular, I have watched all 3 of the new movies. I have gone in as spoiler-free as possible. And I have just had great fun sitting back and watching stuff as a fan. There are points where I look at the movies and I'll turn to a friend and say, they got that from me. But I know I'm thoroughly enjoying what they're doing. And for me, a lot of the guys who work in the films are the same age now that I was when I got to write the X-Wing books. And so I know the excitement. I know, what they got to be feeling. And I envy them that, because that was a great feeling, and I'm glad they can do it, and it would be fun to feel it all over again. But boy, they're just doing a great job. I've been real happy with what I've seen. I
know watching Rogue One, I had a lot of feelings of, that's how I kind of felt reading yours and Aaron Alston's X-Wing books, because it's the same type of feel. These are the characters that don't have the Force. These are characters that don't have, well, for the most part, don't have the extra help, and they're flying around trying to survive. And Rogue One definitely felt a lot like an X-Wing book put into a film, and I loved it. I adored it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think it did have that vibe. I remember someone saying that the Rogue One was not based on the X-Wing books, obviously.
Yeah.
But the person commented that had the X-Wing books not existed, there never would have been a Rogue One.
I could see that. I can definitely see that.
Yeah, and I think that's accurate. Not to take credit for Rogue One, which is a fun film all by itself, but sometimes there do have to be efforts that crack open new ideas. And I think it was great that Lucasfilm, allowed Phantom to buy the license to the X-Wing game and decided, yeah, we'd like to have military science fiction set in this universe. And that's what we work from and where we went.
Okay, so here's another listener one. He says, 4 years ago last month, we lost Aaron Alston. Can you talk about kind of passing the torch, or at least sharing the torch with Mr. Alston with writing the X-Wing books and your memories you have with him on kind of the anniversary of his death?
So Aaron and I had known each other forever and ever and ever. For 32 years, I think, at the time of his death. And because we both came out of the gaming industry. And the first note that I ever had from Aaron was a rejection slip, which was, so we bonded immediately over that. Probably the funniest thing about that relationship, at least as goes to Star Wars, I was a guest at CoastCon way back when. It had to have been in 95, I think. Yeah, it would have been 95. Because it was announced that I had gotten the X-Wing books at that show. So my editor, Tom Dupree, was there. When I arrived at the convention, I checked into the hotel, and they told me that my roommate was already in the room. And, normally when you're a guest at a show, you don't have a roommate. But I had a roommate, and I didn't know who it was, so I asked, and they said it's Aaron Alston. Well, again, Aaron and I were good buddies, so that was okay. I was supposed to have lunch that day with Tom Dupree, the editor from Phantom, and he had asked Bob Salvatore to go along. So we had this panel, and as we were leaving the panel to go off to lunch with Bob, Aaron was standing there. So I introduced Aaron to Tom Dupree as my good friend Aaron Alston, writer, editor. And Tom said to Aaron, hey, we're just going to go get lunch. Do you want to come along? And Aaron said, no, I've already had lunch, but thank you for asking. And so Tom, Bob, and I went out to lunch and, just had fun chatting. When I got back to the hotel, I went up to the room, and there's Aaron sitting in the room just reading. And I looked at him, I said, Aaron, when an editor from Phantom asks you if you want to go to lunch, the answer is yes. And so he sort of hung his head and said, yeah, sorry, I totally messed that up. And it was about a year and a half later that Tom Dupree called me and said, you're gonna do iJedi, and you're gonna do X-Wing 8, and we've got 3 other X-Wing books to do. So I thought I would go ahead and use Aaron Alston. And I said, that's a great idea. So I introduced Aaron to the editor at Phantom, who then picked him to go ahead and do those. And Aaron was just a delight. Really creative guy, funny guy, very, very sharp. And I dearly miss him.
That is a fantastic story. Yeah, I don't know if it's necessarily the best way, but I am glad he was able to get one more of his books out so late in the game, as far as like the old EU went, because I don't know, it just felt right to have the book out before he died. It felt
yeah,
where it was supposed to be. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we have 3 questions left. Here's one from Kay.
Outside your own writing, what are you most excited about at the moment?
Wow. The things I'm most excited about are probably political, and probably would not win either of us any friends. In general, what I tend to read a lot about and what I'm excited about is just the speed with which technology is moving forward, especially in the area of health. For example, just yesterday on the BBC, I listened to a report about doctors in the UK using stem cells to replace the macula in the eyes of a couple of patients to help fight macular degeneration. It's these things that, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, weren't even on the horizon. And now it's very, very possible. So I guess that watching technology help people, I think, is really cool.
Awesome. Here's another one. We're in an age where, classic science fiction, classic fantasy, and even more modern ones are being adapted left and right to TV, to film. We've had a Warcraft movie. We have Shannara with Terry Brooks on the big screen. We have even Mortal Engine. With tons of books and everything are being adapted. How exciting it is, as someone who's grew up as a fan of this stuff, being able to write in universes like this, to be able to see works like these finally appreciated and adapted in ways that actually looks good, does the author justice, and does the work justice in a way that we have never had before.
I think it's very cool. I think the adaptations are a lot of fun. I know that there are some people that get upset because the adaptations aren't necessarily exactly what was in the or between the pages. But I really like the fact that having the written word and then what's going on in media side by side, I think that is a very neat thing. I think there's room for ample room for both things. I also really like a lot of the original stuff. The fact that while they may not be adapting someone's work, the fact that these guys grew up reading X, Y, or Z author and now are out there creating their own stuff, I find really exciting. I probably watch a little bit more television than I ought to, just because you see some of these stories and they are as compelling as they are. So that for me is a lot of fun.
Here's one from a listener. They say, with Pacific Rim coming out, another Pacific Rim coming out this weekend, made me wonder, what would it like to see a Battletech / MechWarrior live adaptation, either on film or on television? As a writer in the Battletech series, what is one or two things that you'd love to see in any sort of live adaptation of Battletech that would make you most excited?
Well, I think, one, just watching some of the mech combats in the different places that we've presented them, the different terrains, the different looks, that would be I think, very, very cool. For me personally, seeing some of the characters that I've created or seeing the Wolfhound on screen would be just really fantastic. I would enjoy that. Quite frankly, with Battletech, I would kind of hope that it's not a big screen thing. I would hope that they actually do a cable adaptation, whether it was Netflix or home box office or some other service like that, just because of the level of politics and the number of books that could pour straight into that universe. I think that would be the best way to go ahead and do it. But, we'll just wait and see, I guess.
I agree on that one. Even Starship Troopers got a TV show that, albeit was early CGI, was better than the movie was because they could have so much more time to dive into these characters. And I think they could even do an animated-ish, Battletech one that would work. And
sure,
TV would definitely give it more time to breathe, which, what's the biggest complaint with movies? They don't have time to breathe because they cut all this stuff out, and people complain that they cut, random conversation 7 here. And so TV, yeah, I definitely agree. TV would be great.
I think movies especially have got so much trouble because there is, they're worried that it's going to be too long. Certain things get cut, which set up other things, and then you have to wait for the director's cut. So, for these things to make sense, and then you see why some of the scenes didn't make it because they didn't make sense, it gets very, very confusing. And I do think with TV, you've got a lot more room. So I think you're right.
Have you ever considered writing for film or TV, or do you just want to take the back seat and say, I'll write the books, you can write the TV? I've
written screenplays with Brian Polito.
Oh, okay.
And it is it's its own art form. I wouldn't mind, if there were going to be a Battletech series, I wouldn't mind possibly writing for it or certainly consulting on it. I think would be really cool. But then again, Hollywood tends to like writers who are younger. So I may be the wrong demographic for working on that sort of thing. And that's, that's their business model. So if all I have to do is stand back, eat popcorn, and, maybe occasionally cash a check, I'm good.
And hopefully it'll bring, if it did happen, they'd bring more attention to your books anyway. So hopefully it'll get them reprinted, and then you can get even more support from it.
Well, and as the late Jerry Pournelle once said, a bad movie never sold fewer books. So yeah, anything in that regard, anything to get people to come back and look at books and enjoy them, I think is definitely worthwhile.
Okay, so we've come to the end. Where do you have any appearances coming up where people can come, find you, talk to you, get things signed? Where would you like them to go if they have more questions, or if they want to meet you in person in the coming months or year?
Well, I've got 4 big conventions throughout the summer. I'll be at Phoenix Comic Fest, and I will be at Origins which is in Columbus, Ohio. I will be at Gen Con, which is in Indianapolis, and I will be at Dragon Con, which is in Atlanta. And at all 4 of those conventions, I will end up teaching a bunch of classes on how to write. You know, I certainly invite people to come and find me there, and if they want to be a writer, take some of those classes.
Awesome.
And then online, you know, definitely on Patreon, you can check out my serial storytelling project Scratch, or if you follow me on Twitter, which is at Mike Stackpole. Every Wednesday, I have a free piece of story related to Scratch that goes out, so you can go there and take a look at what's going on and decide if you want to subscribe.
Quick question: is Dragon Con getting harder and harder the older you get? Since that's like the con that never sleeps.
The convention may never sleep. However, I do find time to. And actually, it works out fine for me. I tend to be a morning person anyway, which anybody who hasn't slept isn't around in the morning. So that makes it easier on me to get where I have to go.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time, sir. I will tag this. I'll tag you on Twitter as soon as this is up, and make sure you get it. Thank you so much for your time, and this will be up later this week once I finish editing everything that goes around it. But thank you so much for your time. I'm glad this was able to finally work out.
Yeah, me too. Thank you very much. This was a lot of fun, and we'll talk to you another time.
That, of course, was Michael Stackpole, a guest who, throughout all my shows, I've been trying to get on since 2011.
And we did it.
What a fantastic way to start a new show with a guest that we've been trying to get on for years, and he's finally here. And he's a fantastic writer. If you haven't read his books, I know the X-Wing books are no longer, quote-unquote, canon. No, they never really were. They're still good. Go read them. They're great. And then it feeds into Aaron Alston's X-Wing books, and then they kind of piggyback and go back and forth for a little bit with their books. They're great. Go read them. They're fantastic books. Nothing can ever undo that fact. His Battletech books are great. They tell me how awesome Clan Ghost Bear is. If you don't know who that is, well, it's a Battletech game coming out really soon, so go learn. And yeah, great guy to have on. And in the future, we're going to be having guests on with usually a guest either like that or a guest from fandom, like running fan groups and pages and so on every show. For right now, we're going to be doing this show once a month. In the space in between, we're going to have the Let's Talk Fandom show, which is going to dive into, for about 20 or 30 minutes each time, into a specific topic of fandom. And that will be more the discussion news-based show, while this one will be more of the Let's Talk Fandom, the cool things that they do, the stuff we make, the people we like, our screaming at the movie that we just saw, enjoy or in fear, or screaming and crying. The cool things that we get to do. Was there a cool design? We'll talk that here. Well, the other one we'll talk more like, focusing in on controversies, on a release, on schedules, answering your questions, and so on. So hopefully you guys stick around. But this has been a Fanitarium. So, Kayla, where can people find you if they want to ask questions, if they want to send us ideas, comments, concerns?
So you can always find us on our Facebook page, but if you're looking for me specifically, you find me on Twitter. My Twitter handle is KAELA907. That's Kayla with an E, 907. That's probably the best place to get a hold of me because I don't do a whole lot on Twitter, but when I do get some Twitter attention, I answer so quickly.
And I am on Twitter at Fanitarium Pod, used to be Bombard Radio, and that's where you can find me, or you can email the show, or email directly to me. We'll go banenathos@gmail.com. That'll be in the show notes. And also, every single month, we'll have the voicemail open, so you guys can send in your comments, questions, either to us or to the guest. Thank you all those who sent in their voicemails this month for our wonderful guest, and we look forward to getting more next month when we come back for more